Oh! Welcome to the Aquarian Shaman broadcast. I'm Star Wolf, your shamanic host, and I'm here to teach you how to transform yourself and transform the world. Twice a month, we'll be exploring how to develop shamanic psycho-spiritual practices to support transformation while expanding your energy field in a way that can also support others. Each episode offers dynamic experiential guidance and teachings on how to safely enter a natural altered state of consciousness using the sacred breath. Additionally, we will discuss the importance of integration and grounding this medicine into your everyday life. Stay tuned. We're about to create authentic, embodied change that will surely grow corn for the future generation. I want to welcome everyone in today. I have a wonderful guest, Keith Caplin, and I'm going to be saying more about him in a few moments. And I won't say anything too personal, Keith. But anyway, keeping it real. Keeping it real. Going to light a little sage here for us. And since we were in Peru together, I brought out the Peru feather from the condor that was given to us. And I love this one because it has the light and the dark both. And I really love that because we walk with both that energy.
Very much so.
I'm just sending some healing energies out to our world that we all know really needs it, especially here right now in the un-United States and also around the world in all the war-torn countries and the wars within all of us. So I just want to send this energy to everyone, to let a little sage into your life. And if you don't know what that is, if this is the first time you've seen anybody smudge, I have an abalone shell, I have some sage here. I'm using this beautiful feather that was given in a good way. And asking that anything that's in any of our fields right now that we want to release, that we let it go, at least for now, maybe for just this hour. We can always renew that anytime we need and want to. And with that, I light a piece of sage for the east and the south and the west and the north. The great above, the great below, and the great within in our relationship to all the directions, to all the elements, to all creatures great and small, and to our own powerful shamanic hearts, our sacred breath during these powerful Aquarian times of tremendous shifting happening on our earth. And if the old saying is truly true, that as above, so below, then it tells me that across the cosmos, if you want to, across the universe or the multiverse, all the dimensions, there's a lot of rocking and rolling going on, that big things are afoot. And I live here in North Carolina where they see Bigfoot, but big things are afoot. And here we are, the cosmic players. And I've chosen to call or name those cosmic players, especially those such as yourself, Keith, who have had a huge awakening and have dedicated yourself your whole life in one form or another to service, but more recently, even more consciously knowing that that's what you're doing as an Aquarian shaman. So I'm going to introduce Keith here by just going ahead and reading a very abbreviated, if you will, bio, but he's done so many things over so many years and probably other lifetimes too. But here it goes. So Keith Caplin, rooted in ancient wisdom and embodied transformation, with over a decade of experience of guiding others through profound healing and awakening, having walked this path personally for over 35 years. They bring deep presence integrity, and soul wisdom to their work. Their offerings include shamanic journey sessions, transformational rites, such as firewalking, arrow breaking, board breaking, and unique approach to sound healing, which they call vibrational energetic resets. These immersive sound experiences use frequency, rhythm, intentional space holding to gently reset the nervous system, release stored trauma, and realign the energetic body, whether through the beat of the drum, the resonance of the sounds, or the heat of the flame. Keith creates sacred containers for people to reclaim their power, reconnect with their soul, and remember who they truly are. So thank you so much for being here, Keith, and welcome to Transformation Network
It's
and
wonderful
to
to be
the
here.
Aquarian Shaman Show.
Thank you so much.
Yes. So
it's weird hearing that read back to me. I'm like, wow, I did all that.
Yes, and you're still doing it. I know sometimes that happens to me, and I'll go like, boy, I've been busy.
Right? I'm like, wow, there's a lot there.
There is a lot. And that's what really touches me. And just to say this, Keith, is that I'm really interested in interviewing and sharing with the world the Aquarian shamans that I've had the opportunity to know and love and work with in a very variety of ways, and we have history with, herstory with, their self-worth. It's like we have that connection. So I have a good sense of who you are. And so for me, the Aquarian shaman is not just an airy-fairy thing. It's an embodied human being who's here to be a planetary service even before they knew what those words meant, and who've been doing it pretty much their whole lives and don't plan on retiring from doing that. That we're, whether we were youngsters or in our middle world, and as we grow into elders, it's just our path. So to carry that Aquarian energy, which basically means to bring the great above or the wisdom of the planet and beyond into this realm as much as we can into our own worlds, and then to share what we've learned with others. It's that complicated and it's that simple, really.
So I always say simple doesn't mean easy.
That's right. That's well said. That's a wisdom piece right there.
Simple and easy are not synonyms.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So I would like to begin just a little bit. I'd like to hear his story, her story, history. And if you could just say a little bit about yourself, your background, and with your working in the schools, just a little bit background. What's some of your roots, those kinds of things, and then maybe even religious teachings as a child or whatever, and then your evolution to now. That's going to be a journey. Okay. So you have a while to talk about that. And I want to ask some questions along the way, but also somewhere in there, bring it up to like when we first connected, and then from there I'll have some questions for you. But go ahead, take it away. Tell us a little bit about who are you?
Who am I? I don't know. Sometimes I wonder that often when I look at myself in the mirror. Like, how did I get to where I am right now in Phoenix, Arizona, from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania? I mean, I would like to say a normal childhood. I hear other people's stories of their growing ups and things like that. And I've said to my brothers multiple times, I'm like, we had a normal upbringing as far as, like what I'm concerned as things. And so I was raised in a Jewish household that wasn't a very practicing Jewish household. And so that was a plus and a minus, because it was sort of a foundational piece of my life. And I was, bar mitzvahed and such. But of my family, I have two older brothers. I was the one that was probably the most involved in it. There was something about it of being together in community and being together in a group with a common purpose or a reason for being there. And there was just something about it that it always drew me in. into the synagogue and Friday night services and things along those lines. But I always knew there was something more. So there was always that something more. So because I didn't have the super structured practice, I was able to go and explore the other more, the more, and what else was there. And so that used to find me out into the woods, or just wandering around in my mind. And so it was in there that I sort of realized what the more was, and that it wasn't contained in this box with just what was being said there. There was so much more that you didn't see, that I knew was just as important. And so as a child, I would go and get lost out in the woods, and spend hours. In the summer, we would go to not a day camp. I didn't go to a camp, but we went to like a swim club type of thing. And I spent more times out in the woods at the swim club than I did in the pool. In fact, actually, that was my first thing I did, was we usually go out into the woods and sit out there for a couple hours and then come back and join the rest of the people that were at the club. And so that was sort of my thing. You can see I have plants behind me. I've always had a thing with nature and plants. I like to have it in my house as well as, be out in it when I can. And then it was really when I started, I'm trying to think, I think I got my first deck of tarot cards when I was in like 7th grade. And I had them like hidden in the house somewhere so my mom didn't see them, because, that was of the devil and all that other stuff. So, so I was always interested in mythology and magic. And so in Egyptian mythology was some of my earliest memories that I have, is seeing Egyptian images and the deities in Egypt and the structures in Egypt, and having some tie. Passover and the Jewish holidays was always my favorite holiday because we were in Egypt and there was so much magic in it. And so that always drew me in. And so things just evolved and grew from there. I started, I'm a science person, so I was always interested in science and how things worked in the natural world, and interconnectedness of things in the natural world. And so when I went away to college and started college, I started studying my degrees in animal science and microbiology, is what my undergraduate degree is in. And then my graduate degree is in geosciences. So science has always been a thing. And I like that. And it in my mind, it very much meshed with the mystic. I've gotten asked oftentimes, like, how are you so involved in all the science stuff and yet believe in magic? And I'm like, how do you not? Like, how can you not? Like, magic is that idea that science is following. So many things that were once magic are now can be explained by science in terms of physics, quantum physics, as we learn, because science is only as good as the tools that you have. And so as we've gotten more advanced tools and being able to measure things more, that are smaller and bigger, our understanding of our world has gotten clearer and also more confusing at the same time, and so to me, science is sort of catching up to what the mystics and spiritualists intuitively knew about things. And so for me, they very much meshed together. There was never a separation for me in that.
Yeah, Keith, wouldn't you say that just because science can create words and theories and various things, that those words and naming things doesn't necessarily take away the magic? Like, to all of a sudden say this is an apple, it comes from a tree, and here how it grows, doesn't take away the magic at all about how did this tree grow, how did it do this, how did it create an apple, how does it know how to do that, all those kinds of things. That there's, as one person would say that I've heard talk about before, these kind of things, that these are God particles. If you don't like the name God, that's okay. Great mystery, Elvis, whatever.
Fill in the word particle.
These are the particles of the divine that's creating everything. So to say that, science proves it, I would say that mysticism proves science.
Yeah. Well, they work in conjunction with each
together.
other.
Right.
Yeah.
There's
there was
no conflict.
Right. So you using that example reminds me of, there used to be a TV show on called Joan of Arcadia. And it was about this girl, her name was Joan, but she was supposedly, like, I don't know I didn't watch many episodes of it, but anyway, in this one episode, she would always have these conversations with this person that would show up and would be God. And she never believed that it was God. And she's like, prove to me that you're God. And he goes like this to a tree. And she goes, it's a tree. And he goes, let me see you make one. And like, so that story sort of stuck. Like, you can't explain everything. And even if you can, like you said, it doesn't take away the magic. Like, I can explain why sunsets look the way they do, why the color of them is the way that they are, and why they have the certain, hues of purples and pinks and all that stuff, and why they look more brilliant on certain days when there's other stuff in the atmosphere. Whatever, I can explain all that, and science can explain all that. It doesn't take away the magic of it. Like, explaining how a flower blossoms doesn't take away the magic of the flower and the blooming of the flower. It's still there. It just, if anything, it gives you a deeper understanding. And then also truly the uniqueness of it. Like, that sunset will never happen again, ever. Like, it'll never look like it just did. And when I do sessions with people, that's one thing I say is that this session is unique. It will never, even if we all sit here together again, it'll never be the same as it is right now. And that's magic.
Yes, very much so.
Yeah,
I've often said that I don't want to live in a world where there's no love and no magic, and thankfully there's a lot here. There's a lot of other stuff here, but love and magic will get us through. Whether that magic is, whether you want to call it spirituality or a particular path or whatever, it's, it really is that whole thing about that a wise person can't get into the kingdom of heaven, but a child can. So that it's that part of us that stays new, that stays innocent, and that doesn't allow explanations to put us in a box, and just can appreciate, as you said, the formulas or the ideas or the explanations, but not to reduce things to that level completely, because it's so much more. And science also changes itself over time.
Because it learns.
Yeah.
It's evolving. It learns.
Yeah.
As it learns more, it changes stories.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you got to, this is a good beginning, but you've got childhood and going on into your profession and all of that. But this current place that you're in of service, and you're still doing some of the other, but tell us a little bit about how you, what happened for you? How did you take this leap of faith into doing sound healing and, being a shamanic healer? What happened for you?
So this practice, everything that I did was very much a personal practice of mine. Like, maybe I would share things with friends here and there, but it was never an intention. It was never a goal. It was never a dream. It was never any of that. It was me working on me. And it was a way of me connecting authentically and deeply and intimately with my community of people that were like-minded. So that's really all it ever was. And then back east, when I lived, I was going to a talking circle that somebody had. They had it I think once a month, and would go there. And again, it was the same thing, was people gathering like-minded, sharing, open forum to have a talk. And so I really enjoyed that community aspect. So as many things do, they have a lifetime. And so that circle that I was part of dissolved. Or I should say, I chose to remove myself from it because things weren't going in a direction that was in alignment with me anymore. And so the 4 people that I became very close with them, we were like, well, we can start our own. And so we started our own talking circle, and we had it twice a month. And sometimes there would be just the 4 of us, and sometimes there was up to 50 of us in a room, and we'd rotate it where it was. It was in one of our places or something like that. And so I had that going on, but again, it wasn't really anything I was doing anything. We were just holding a space and created a container for people to openly share, be vulnerable, feel safe, because that normally doesn't happen in people's everyday life. And so that's sort of where that part of it started. And then I moved to Arizona in 96, and I thought it was going to be this big spiritual mecca and everyone's going to be the same, like everyone's going to be on the quest. And, I was very much involved in a lot of native teachings. I had a bunch of people that were native teachers back in Pennsylvania. And so, coming out to the Southwest, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I was totally, totally miss on that one.
Different
So
plan.
not, yeah, different plan. So it was not that. It was, and so it forced me to become very internal and very solitary and very focused on me and how am I showing up in the world. It was also my first time living away from my family. Everybody in my family lived on the East Coast. So I was completely out here on my own with the two friends that moved out here with me. And so just trying to figure out what my life was going to look like out here. And so that was me figuring out all that stuff for myself and fumbling down and doing things. And I did like a life coaching program. But again, the spirituality and the interacting with the world as a way of being that way consciously was always there. It wasn't something I like set aside to do. It just became part of who I was and just how I showed up in the world. And also showed up very human. Like I had my emotions. I'd have my get mads and, whatever. Like you said in the beginning, like the light and the dark. There's no difference between the two. They're both important aspects of who you are. And so walking that path and figuring that out, again, I was doing this as a private. I would help friends of mine I had a friend of mine, Stephanie Phelps, that was she used to do group shamanic journeys, and I would always drum for her. So I would drum while she would guide and facilitate the journey. She would also have ceremonies on her land out here, and I would assist and help like that. So I was sort of like the person in the background, like doing things like that. And again, never wanting to be the person in the foreground. Like that was not the thing. And then a friend of mine had a wellness center here, and he approached me and he said, "Hey, I want to start doing a meditation class every Tuesday." Well, let me back up a second. I'm a teacher. I teach high school. I'm a high school science teacher by trade. That's what I've been doing now. I'm getting ready to start my 30th year at the same school of teaching. And even in my teaching, so when I teach Earth and Space Science, and even within that teaching, I would infuse elements of like broader spirituality things, like, talking about the Big Bang and the creation of the universe and referencing it and talking about it in terms of like, we know to this point, we don't know anything beyond that point. So I'm like, that point's like the God moment, because we don't know what happened beyond that point yet. And we may never. And so like, I would always talk about it in terms of this mystery and that this is one explanation. And we did things with rocks and minerals. They had to make like playing cards for different minerals or different rocks. And they had to do like sort of like a baseball card. And so on the front, they had to have a picture and the information of it. And then on the back, they had to tell me like the physical properties of it, of the thing. And then they had to tell me either medical use of the mineral, like physical use of the mineral, or spiritual use of the mineral. Like they had picked the three. So I had them do stuff like that. And we would talk about things like that all the time. I had them talk about mythology and creation myths from the different cultures, because I worked in a very, very multicultural school, which I loved.
I'm just going to say, I wish I'd had you as a science teacher.
So like, and I had, so I always had, like I said, it was always part of who I was. It wasn't something that I did. Anyway, so then a friend of mine, fast forward, had his wellness center, and he asked me if I wanted to start doing like a group shamanic journey for people. And I was like, huh? And I was totally taken aback. I'm like, I can't do that. He's like, sure you can. You can totally do it. And so that was sort of the invitation to start doing public service, things for people. And so it started there, and then it just built from there. And then I helped him with a sound meditation that he was doing, because shamanic work was my primary, like that sort of was my gateway drug.
It really called to you. I mean, really,
correct. Just that way of connecting, like that way of connecting with the world and the world around me in a way that was informed both ways. It was a two-way communication, and it wasn't just like, oh, I know and this is what I'm doing. You know, it was a very way, I always viewed shamanism, it's not as a religion, but it's a set of practices, and it's a set of practices that allow you to connect. And
Right.
whatever that looks like for you is whatever that looks like for you. Like, you know, as well as I do, that word has been thrown all over the place. And,
Right.
you know, and so that's where it was. But then like sound came into that. And then I started doing sound healing and such like that. But at this also point in time, prior to that, I was doing a talking circle, and sort of where I found you was probably like, and Venus Rising was probably around 2008 ish, somewhere around in there. And I was just doing a search on the internet pre-Google, and
Yeah.
I saw this
How did
thing
we
like,
ever find anything
yeah,
pre-Google?
it was Metacrawler. I think Metacrawler was the search engine that I used. And the 30 shamanic questions came up. And so I'm like, oh, let me look at that. And so I looked at those and I'm like, oh, this seems pretty cool. So I ordered them. And like, I have the original, like,
I
you printed
know.
version. Like, this is a rare copy.
You should hold that. Maybe you could auction that off
I was
someday.
like, I don't even know if there's like a print date in here or not. You know, so like when it was printed. Anyway, 2005, it says originally.
Yeah.
So that's where I found them. I did that with my talking circle. Like I did it with myself first and a friend of mine, and people started noticing and asking questions about it. And I was like, well, I'm doing these things. And
Yeah, you
then
do it with a partner. It's a
correct.
30
It's a
smart questions for humanity. So it's I mean, you could certainly work them on your own, but where two or more are gathered, it's much more powerful when somebody
absolutely
receives your answers and then shares back with you.
correct. Absolutely. So my friend Kim and I did it together. Every day we got on the phone and we did that was our morning thing that we did. And it was great. It was very eye-opening. And I thought, I'm like, wow, I could do this with my talking circle. And so that's when I emailed you and talked to you about it and asked permission. And you said, that would be wonderful. Go for it. And so, you know, I brought the questions to the group and we did it. And so, like I said, that was probably around 2008, and then 2011. And I didn't know much about breath work. I didn't find you through shamanic breath work. I found you through the shamanic questions. And so, like, you stayed on my radar through all that time, and then you came out to Sedona. It was Breathe America. I think it was in 2011.
Oh,
It was
yeah.
on a Friday, and I'm like, I am driving up to Sedona. I'm taking off from school, and I'm going to meet this woman. And so I drove up, and the rest is history.
I love it.
And so, but that's sort of where then that's where you and I made that connection, and that's when I met Brad.
Yeah.
And then like our journey just continued from there.
Yeah.
Which has been wonderful. You know,
Yeah,
so
and it's really evolved. I mean, our friendship has definitely evolved. I mean, we've done a lot of things together. You've been coming out to, and we'll say more about that in a moment, but you've been coming out to Gathering of the Shamans for at least 5 or 6 or 7, I don't know, 7
like
years.
7 years now.
The big conference that's out there every year out at Mago Retreat Center right outside of Sedona, and you do all kind of things there with the sound healing and that sort of thing. So you've really become like a staple, a part of that every year.
But I have you to thank for that.
Well, you know, you just needed to have exposure. That's all.
Yeah, because I came up, I was there originally to help you because we were helping with the breath work, and so walking the floor and helping support you in the work that you do. And like you said, the doors opened, and I said yes.
Yes. And then you came through our training and went through SHIP, and which is the shamanic healing story process, and also shamanic breathwork facilitator. And we've been to Peru together. And you've come up here to North Carolina, to Venus Rising Central, if you will, here in the magical mountains of North Carolina at our retreat center. And you become our official, firewalk leader every year during our 2-week training here and at other places too. So, baby, you've come a long ways.
I know, right? Like from never wanting that as being part of my list of things that I wanted to accomplish. It's a lot. And initially, like I said, it all started because I wanted to just work on me.
Yeah.
Like I just wanted to work on me, and realizing that that's really where all the work comes. That's where all the work is.
Mm.
You know, like you talk about the Aquarian shaman and about how how do you integrate and embody what you're receiving, and that's the work.
Right.
You know, that's really the work. Like going and doing a journey, or going and doing a sound bath, or going and doing a breath work, or going and doing any of that stuff, they're amazingly powerful experiences. And if you just leave them there, they're amazingly powerful experiences. But they can be that much more if you actually work them and like do something. Like the doing is the thing.
Yeah, you've got to absorb it first for yourself. You know, a lot of teachers want to kind of be a teacher before they're really a teacher. We're all
Mm-hmm.
teachers. Children are teachers, and everything's a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
But to have a certain level of authority in the sense of experience,
Mm-hmm.
and to be able to provide safety for
Yeah.
people, to become the container that holds the safety, for like a cocoon for
Mm-hmm.
people's tremendous transformation, it means that we have to go first. And it's not just a one-time thing throughout our lives, as you know, just like the seasons and the, you know, of every year, that we have seasons in our lives where, you know, people that we love pass away, our parents and or
Mm-hmm.
beloved, or a pet, or a tree, or just things change, and even our own ideas that we were so attached to, and they evolve. And you know, that's the most sacred cow, is when we go, but I believed this, and oh, I don't see it that way anymore, or I see it differently, or I see the bigger picture. So it's a journey, and we talk
Mm-hmm.
about it a lot at Venus Rising, which you know very well, that it's not a circle path, that it's not a linear path, that it's a spiral path, and that spiral path continually asks us, it requires of us, if we're going to evolve our consciousness, we started this whole conversation today with this, to see bigger and bigger pictures. And it means that the ego has to go through a death to it, what it believes or thinks is reality, in
Mm-hmm.
order to see a greater reality for
Mm-hmm.
ourselves and for others. And then if we're teaching and sharing with others, like Grandmother Twilight used to tease me, and she says, "Boy, girl, you challenge me. I have to keep a couple of steps ahead of you. This old wolf has to speed up." You know,
Right.
and that's, it's a reality, is that we really can't fully teach something we haven't learned ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
and it
Well,
requires more than reading. Reading's great. I
yeah.
obviously, this is my 13th book, you know, Aquarian
Right.
Shaman. I write,
I got it
but
too.
reading. But obvious, and you're in here, by the way. You remember that we put
Yeah.
some of the people I really love, and I love many people, but really value and see them as planetary workers and Aquarian shamans. But it takes so much willingness to not only encourage, to not only let go of your old identity, to own it fully, but then to let go of your old identity and say, oh, it's a part of me, but it's not my major
Right.
self in the world. And then you realize you've just gone through an ego death. And you know this. When that happens, for a little while we're kind of like a plant that's been pulled up with our roots, and we're just kind of shaking. We're like, am I going to get replanted? Am I going to,
Right.
what's going to happen? You know, and then all of a sudden we get put into a bigger pot, if you will, or into the earth, and it's like, whoa, and all this new energy comes through, this
Yeah.
kundalini life force. And then we're in that new incarnation. We get all comfortable there for a few months or a year or two or three,
Whatever.
and then
Yeah.
boom, it's, you know, it's like,
The
but
pot
wait a
breaks.
minute, this works. I'm happy here. I was okay
Right.
leaving this, but this feels, and but you know, can you imagine a tree standing out there saying, I refuse to put my roots deeper. I refuse to stretch my branches further.
Further.
I
Right.
am not going to do this.
I refuse to grow more leaves.
That's right. That's
Like
it.
I'm not gonna grow new leaves. These all
That's
fell off. I'm not growing them again.
not doing it,
Yeah.
you know. And yet
And
nature, and I love it with your science background, whether it's the minerals that change over time, or the plants or the animals or humans, that says apparently on this planet at least, and I suspect throughout the cosmos, that's what's going on.
yeah.
That it's a shamanic cosmos constantly
Shifting
dying
and
and being
changing.
reborn, dying and being reborn. And the psyche can't help but get scared, like a plant being pulled up in its roots,
Mhm.
shaking. We can't help that. That's okay. But if we stay stuck in that fear and we don't grow, we don't become the next octave of who it is we truly are.
Yeah.
And when that happens, we're in trouble. We really are
Yeah.
dying.
Yeah, because then you just sort of you stagnate. Like, okay, you may be, if you're okay living on autopilot and not having anything stretching, then choose that. That's fine. But that's going to get, for me, I can speak for me, that gets boring after a while. Like, I like to challenge myself. Now, I always say to the universe, I'm like, that's not asking for too much at once. Like, give it to me in pieces that I can navigate and handle, please. Like, I'll work it, but don't throw it all at once. Like, I don't need a train wreck. You can tap me on the shoulder and I'll be like, oh, okay. Like, but that's part of that dynamic of you co-creating in it.
It's true.
Where it's not like the world isn't happening to you, you're happening with the world. So you're very much part of that whole same process. And so we're not removed from the system and at the mercy of the system. I mean, in some ways we're at the mercy of the system, but we navigate that though consciously within ourselves. I always say, like, people are like, well, we have a mastery over nature. I'm like, yeah, try to stop an earthquake. Stop a hurricane, stop a tornado. Like, we don't have that much mastery that we think, over those bigger processes, but how we respond and how we react, that we do. Like, so how do we navigate within those bigger cycles? Like you said, it's that spiral path, and things will always come back. They just come back to, slightly different, or a reminder like, hey, did you really figure it out that last time around? Let's go up to a different level and check.
And
So it's interesting.
it's also, that thing that I think that happens for folks like us, that we begin to realize that the only real thing that matters is love and magic.
Mm-hmm.
And that translates into planetary service. And that planetary service, not like, oh, planetary service. It's a joy in our hearts to be a part of nature and to see that nature is spirit filled and that it's not separate from
Right.
God as great mystery, great spirit. It's all of it, everything, rocks, have a heartbeat, that everything is alive and that we're a part of that. And we're, we happen to be human beings at this moment, but we have, plant, all the
We are
elements.
made of the stuff of stars.
Yeah. And
like, everything that is in us was in a star.
that's right. And so here we are evolving more fully into that and waking up to that, and more, as I say, in mass, probably because of the discomfort in the world. Because if we're a little too comfortable, and that's, I think comfort sometimes says it's okay to rest, take care of yourself, do this, you're being nurtured, you're being fed, you're producing. But we can begin to feel the discomfort when we begin to stagnated. And we may not understand it. We say, but this is okay. Well, I don't want to change or whatever. There may be resistance. But if you're like you and I, and we've been through the eye of the hurricane a few times, we understand we can only resist so long. We can only put it off so long. And then it's really going to have to get our attention.
Yeah. I was always said, I'm like, I always try to pay attention to the tap on the shoulder instead of the smack in the head with a board. Like, I try to be aware enough to, like, recognize it when it's just the tap on my shoulder, and I have a little bit more, like, say and sort of consciousness around how to navigate it, versus, like, I get smacked in the head out of nowhere, I'm blindsided, where then I have to, like, try to realign myself and then work. So it's like I've doubled my work when I'm not paying attention. And so if I actively pay attention and consciously try to step forward in my life, then it's constantly that state of co-creating, instead of, hey, you're off track, slam, we have to, like, redirect you back, but you're not paying attention, so we got to do it really hard. So I try
it's not
not
a
to do that,
punishment.
but we're human.
It's guidance. It's not a punishment,
Yeah, no, it's
like
human.
punishment to the ego. I was going to say to the ego part of ourselves that wants out of safety and out of comfort wants to remain the same, you know, when it's asked to let an aspect of itself die, um, of course there is a struggle between
Hmm.
birth and death, and rebirth. And I, at least for myself, I find that I'm pretty stubborn, but I'm less stubborn with that,
Yeah.
um, because I know who's going to win in the end. And it's not my old ego. And if it does, I'd really be in trouble,
Right.
you know? And so, but I'm also admit that sometimes some of the things, people, places, and things that I have to release in order to move to that next octave, um, and it's not like I have to let them go, but I mean, it's just you move and things change. Just like
Hmm.
when you move from one place to the other, or you did, whatever. Um, that I know that I'm going to go through a grief process, which is natural. That I know that I'm going to look back on certain things and have some regrets, or need to make some amends, or if I, depending on how well I did the transition,
Yeah.
those kinds of things. But ultimately, if I don't move on into that next space, no one benefits from my
Right.
existence, especially me.
Yeah. Because then I know I find myself getting bitter or jaded or
Hmm.
spiteful, and then I lose sight of the love and the magic.
Right.
Whereas if I try to stay focused on that love and the magic, I understand that all of these things are going to go through our shakeup period, but they're ultimately going to settle back into a place. And where they settle back may be slightly different than where they were before. And just learning to trust that that'll be okay and it'll be where it needs to be. That's the hard part.
It
that's
is.
Yeah, that's
It's
the hard
trusting.
part.
It's
Yeah, it's the
trusting.
trusting part. And especially, like you said, we're in a human world, so we interact with other people. And so, on a very um, like surfacey, mundane level, we learn things about trust and distrust that we then apply on a much larger scale that it doesn't apply. So like I can think of experiences in my life where I've had experiences with certain people and it's led me to not trust them for whatever reason. But then if I let that go, that distrust becomes almost like a cancer and infuses everything. And then I
Right.
start distrusting myself. I start distrusting spirit. I start distrusting my intuition. I start distrusting the person that has nothing but my best interest in mind. But because I'm letting that infuse and become something bigger than it ever was really meant to be, where it was just that one sole incident, like I've allowed it to become bigger,
Hmm.
and so learning those nuances of how to navigate it, recognize it, learn from it, and then be able to and not have it infuse everything.
It's beautiful. So I'd like to shift gears just a little bit in
Okay.
that, and bring it really current. The world right now is in such a major transformation. The whole world, not only,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, America, but the whole world, it seems, is in. I'm thinking about the song from years ago that I used to play a lot. The whole world is burning. The
Mm-hmm.
whole world is burning. And there is this sense that the whole world is in a fire cycle. In the Venus Rising, we teach the cycles of change, and we talk that the first cycle is water, and then earth, and then fire, and then opening up through the fire to allow spirit to carry us into air and into
Mm-hmm.
that bigger picture and the new world or the rebirth. Certainly to me, it feels like we're in a very elemental process right now, but it definitely feels like here in this country and perhaps around the world with the famines and the floods and the everything. If you watch anything at all,
Yeah.
you can't escape it. Even if you don't do much, if you watch anything or talk to anybody,
Yeah, it's there.
that elementally, energetically, the world is in a very big fire cycle. And water too. I mean, we just had the floods in Texas there, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and just so all of it is working together, and the big storms and the big winds that come, the hurricane that came close here to where
Yeah.
we live, and on the other side of Asheville, which has never, and in human consciousness ever come this far in before. So the world, the planet itself is changing environmentally.
Mm-hmm.
It's definitely changing environmentally. And because I believe that inspired within nature is spirit, that the spirits within nature are working. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, the indigenous peoples all around the world have talked about this forever, if we've paid attention.
Right.
And even before those peoples, if we look, you were taken by Egypt, so am I, and we've had that connection. In Egypt, obviously, if you look at what they're built upon and built upon, in Peru, if you look at all the cultures, the Maya, if you look all around the world, Greece, everywhere, they're finding more and more in the bottoms of the oceans, in the backs of caverns of caves, that the world history and herstory much older, much more, that there's probably been civilizations, like they talk about, whether it's Atlanta, Lemuria, but nameless.
Yeah.
That and it's not just a new age airy fairy thing. This is scientifically, they can date things and stuff and look at it. And so with that, it feels like, and especially with the prophecies of the elders that I knew, like Grandmother Twyla, I have a little picture of me here with her. She's giving me a little kiss. We're kissing each other at a Wolf Song gathering. She's always here with me. That I don't know, I'm just curious what you think. I don't know if we just have to go through these cycles of complete almost annihilation and then rebuild again, if that's just the way it is, a spiral path on this earth, or if there's going to be a time, where perhaps we've learned whatever there is to learn on this planet, and perhaps we may find ourselves like the gods, if you will,
right,
living in some sort of more harmonious, that things might planetarily, energetically explode in the set, but there might be truly the dream that, that we imagine, that John Lennon imagined, a world without war, imagine peace, the whole world. I'd love to know your thoughts on that.
So I have a couple thoughts on that come to mind. So the first one that comes to mind,
so go for
it. The first one that comes to mind is when you talk about cycles, like we think of a short, like for us, a long period of time is 100 years, for a human lifetime. That's like a millisecond, less than a millisecond. It's a billionth of a second in geologic time. So people need to, like for me, I know I try to be really aware of what kind of cycle am I talking about. Like, am I talking about a human cycle? Because then that shifts the timeline. Whereas if I'm talking on a much larger cycle, a million years is short. And so like that process and that affects your perspective of how you look at something. Like 65 million years ago when dinosaurs were supposedly roaming around here was not long ago in terms of the history of the planet. So like when you start to shift things in perspective like that, like all of a sudden these things that we see happening here, they're like, oh yeah, that's not a big deal. It's a big deal to us because we're living here right now. And so, but in terms of the planet, it's not a big deal. Like for us, it is, because it's, devastating lives and all that other stuff, which is absolutely horrible. But in the scale of the planet, it's not that big of a deal.
Bigger picture.
Yeah, it's a bigger picture. So when you have that both and picture of realizing like, yes, this was a horrible experience and it's part of the natural process that happens, like, I mean, Arizona used to, where I'm living right now, used to be underwater. It's now 115 degrees outside, and dry as a bone, so to say that things don't change is to be ignorant in terms of climate and the evolution of the planet, the shifting of the planet, whatever you want to call it. But then you were saying, like, in terms of humanity and understanding like our part in that, I really believe it's, people need to start looking in their backyards again and not worry about like what's happening oceans away. Like people can tell me what's happening over in name a country, but if I say, well, what happened down the street from you? They don't know. And so like when I was growing up, we knew more about what was happening locally the good news and the bad news of what was going on locally, because it had more of an impact on us. That global thing was like, the world news that you saw little bits of. And not saying ignore it, but it seems like there's been this huge shift away from managing your quote unquote own backyard, what you actually do have some kind of semblance of interaction with, and focusing so much on things that are so far a world away from you that you can't possibly impact directly. So like, I always say you're the walking billboard of your life, and how you show up in the world is your billboard. Like how you show up and what you do in your world. It's not like, oh, I do this on Sundays and then everything else is a wreck. It's an all the time, every day, all the time thing. It's not just, oh, I'm going to choose to do it today and I'll take that and do that. It's, like I said at the beginning, it's become a way I live my life, and the way you live your life, and the way you engage with your community and your people. And then that just, it can't help but naturally spread outwards from
Right. Make that,
because then you're an example, like, oh, that's what it can look like. So when somebody doesn't know what it can look like and they don't have anybody around them modeling it, it becomes an impossibility. But when you have people that are modeling those things that are in your awareness or around you, then you're like, oh, I know what that can look like. I can try to do that.
Yeah.
Be
it's
that
like
way.
Gandhi said, be the change you want to see. Be the change you want to see. I think that's a really good place to kind of begin to close this time together, is to...
I can't believe it's been an hour already.
I know. We're having shamanic fun, huh? to look at what we can do, what's right before us, like you said, whether it's right next door in our own backyard, that kind of thing. That I'm so struck by the people in Texas with the floods, and how, government wasn't showing up for them. It just wasn't happening. And so the people locally started doing what they could, and as much as they could. And then it expanded out because people got word of that. And then suddenly there's, there's the people, there's Dolly Parton, and,
Yeah.
and there's people from Led Zeppelin, and, and on and different movie stars, and all these people, and of course, Taylor Swift and her fella, So it's like, it reached a much bigger impact, but it started very
Very local.
very local, and then it does begin to affect everyone, and it opened up everybody's hearts around the world. And
well, I always say, look at
9/11.
9/11. Like, look what happened after 9/11. Like, all of a sudden, people knew their neighbors.
That's true. That's true. So let's just think about that and just kind of hold that for a moment, and just as part of our closing today is that what we do matters.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say as well, Keith? What we do
I would say that
in our own backyard matters.
Our own backyard matters, and that we are each a stone, being that we are thrown into the life that is the pond, and we create ripples. And those ripples will impact the entire pond to some degree or another. And that don't stop being the stone. Like, keep making ripples.
Even if it's not welcome sometimes by other people. That's okay.
But it will be received by the people that are meant to receive it. And it may challenge the people that didn't like it, and may open their eyes 5 years from now.
Yeah.
Like, I've had students come back to me like 8 years down the road. They're like, I hated you in class. You were so mean. You were this, you were that, you were this. And then they're like, but then all of a sudden it made sense.
Yeah. Well, it's hard for me to imagine you being mean. You're such a sweet
I was just being direct and holding them accountable.
Well, sometimes being direct and holding the boundaries, people think you're mean. I understand that. I get that sometimes too. And I was like, no is a sentence.
No, no
it's a sentence. So thank you for being here today, Keith.
This was awesome.
Thank you so much for showing up, as I said before, gathering the shamans in Peru, and all the things that you've done with Venus Rising, and all the things you've done with so many other people and things. And I'm grateful you were just here. that really helped me.
No, that was awesome.
My mom was passing. It was so great to do the firewalk with you on that evening. It felt like a portal for me. So let's keep on walking on the fire, through the
Walk in
fires
the
together,
fire.
literally and figuratively, and embracing that fire and seeing how we can transform ourselves and transform the world and invite more
One
people.
person at a time.
That's right. And invite more people, if they will, to dare to be the Aquarian shamans themselves and not leave it on other people to do it for them, but for us all to do it together. So thank
Absolutely.
you. Love
Thank you
you.
so much.
And
I love you.
yeah, thank you so much for being here today. And let's keep breathing and believing. And
I'll see you in October in Egypt.
I'll see you in October in Egypt. What a great way to end.
Right?
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you, dear one.
Thank
Love
you
you.
so much. It was a pleasure and an honor. I love you. And I'm glad I was able to be available to have this conversation and do this with you because it was lovely.
Okay. So I think we're complete here, and that's beautiful.
Thank you.
This is Star Wolf, and you've been listening to the Experiential Aquarian Shaman broadcast. Transform yourself, transform the world. Join me every second and fourth Tuesday at 2 p.m. Pacific on Transformation Talk Radio to awaken your inner Aquarian shaman. Never miss an episode. Subscribe to my channel and connect with me on social media at Linda Star Wolf. For more information about my offerings and trainings, visit shamanicbreathwork.org. Thank you for taking this special time to journey with me.